All right, well, at 6:05 p.m. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This is the Chaine Annexation Public Information Meeting. No official action will be taken tonight since this is not a town council meeting, but we're here to answer any and all of your questions relative to the possibility of the Town of Windermere annexing in the Chaine HOA. Not only the HOA, but actually the area that is known as Chaine. We would ask that you hold all questions until after the presentation, because hopefully we can answer a lot of your questions prior to the end of the presentation. I'm Robert Smith. I'm the town manager, Town of Windermere. We have Brad Cornelius with Wade Trim, our planning consultant, on the line. We have Tanya Elliott Moore, our public works director, and we have Chief Dave Ogden on as well. Mayor O'Brien, since his regress, he's on a flight right now, so he was unable to attend tonight. This is being recorded, so we'll post this to our YouTube channel in order for you to go ahead and share this with any of your neighbors, friends, or anybody else that has any questions about the possibility of the annexation of Chaine. With that said, the way the program is going to work tonight is we're going to have Wade Trim present the logistics of how it works, what is annexation, so on and so forth. Then I'll get into the meat and potatoes of who's responsible for what the financial impact is going to be to you. And then Chief Ogden will get into the public safety sector. And then we'll do a Q&A after that. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Brad. And Brad, you on?
All right, thank you, Robert. Again, as Robert said, my name is Brad Cornelius with Wade Trim, and I'm serving as the contracted town planner for Town of Windermere. And yeah, I'll give you all an overview of the annexation process and a little bit of background on that. So, Robert, if you can go to my next slide, please. So, as y'all know, that y'all are there, the Chaine area. There's south of Lake Butler. It abuts the town to the west of the town's boundary. About 103 acres. There's 74 parcels there, 51 homes. And currently in the county, you have a rural settlement, future land use, and a rural country estate zoning there in Orange County. So the map there you see on the left is the area that's being considered for the annexation, for the discussion here for annexation. Next, please. So in Florida, there's two primary ways that annexation can occur. So the first way is what's called voluntary annexation. And that's a situation where the owner of a property would petition the local government, the city, or in this case, the town, and request to be annexed into that community, into that jurisdiction. And that's called a voluntary annexation, where that property owner voluntarily says, yes, I want to be annexed. That process is basically a process of noticing with the county and then public hearings with the town council for that to occur. So that's what's called a voluntary annexation, and that's one way annexation can occur. The second way is called involuntary annexation, and that's where the landowners, they're not petitioning or asking to be brought in, but there's an interest in it, and then basically the town moves that process forward in terms of doing analysis to make sure that the town can provide appropriate public services, make sure it meets the criteria for annexation. And what's the big difference here is involuntary annexation now requires a vote. It requires a referendum of the people in the area that is proposed to be annexed in. So that's the big difference between the voluntary and involuntary, is the involuntary does require the referendum. The Florida law on annexation doesn't require, but the town council could, if they chose to do so, could have a referendum not only in the area to be annexed, but also of the residents of the town themselves. So it could, but it doesn't have to be that way. The only required referendum is the area that's proposed for annexation. So those are the two ways that occurs. Now, what happens in both of these after an annexation occurs, then we as a town would have to process what's a comprehensive plan amendment and a zoning amendment to include Chaine within the town's regulatory authority in terms of land use and planning and zoning. And that would be that following step after annexation. Next, please. So what, in terms of Chaine du Lac specifically, what's been discussed already, and this will be more than once now, is the town was looking for interest there in the community. And one of the things that was put out there was, have interest of at least 51% of the property owners, that there is support for that. So the town if the town does move forward with it, because there is expense related to the referendum, make sure that there is interest in that before they move forward. And that's the purpose for why that's there. It has to be involuntary in this case because, one, I don't believe we have every single property owner there wants to be annexed in. And one of the requirements of annexation, you can't create a situation where you have pockets of areas that are still unincorporated. It has to come in either all as one or at least together in a consolidated piece and not in pieces. So for that Chaine du Lac area, that's the way it has to be done, is through the voluntary and the referendum. I will say we did get information from the supervisor election. So as of July of 2023, in that Chaine du Lac annexation area, there's 108 registered voters. And for that referendum to pass, it's just a simple majority of that 108 registered voters in Chaine du Lac. Is how that would happen if that's what occurs. Next, please. A little bit more on the statutory requirements. So as I said, this process is set out within Florida statutes in Chapter 171. And there's some basic standards that we have to assure. One, like I already spoke about, you have to be contiguous to the existing boundary. The other part is that we have to look at it in terms of that we're not creating like long strips of annexation, that it's somewhat compact and it makes sense. It's not just trying to grab an area running along the side of a road. So that's what it talks about when it talks about compact kind of development. We have to look at that. And the Chaine du Lac area, you do meet those criteria. You're contiguous to the boundaries, and you're a compact area, you're a defined area for that. So it's wouldn't be in violation of that. So we've already did that very basic kind of analysis, which is pretty simple to do. Next, please. The next one is, again, I'm not going to read all that. But the other part that we have to look at under the statute is this area developed for what the statute calls urban purposes? Meaning it's not farmland, it's not green fields where development hasn't already occurred. Clearly, you're there, you're already developed. So that's why I won't go through this. You meet the standards. This is an urbanized area. There's no concern that, this is the town trying to annex out into new green areas to bring in development into that community. This is something that's already there. So you do meet that statutory requirement for it being developed for urban purposes. So again, no concerns with that as well. Next, please. So as I said earlier, if this gets annexed in, the next step that we have to take then is to assign the town's comprehensive plan and zoning regulations to this area. Until that happens, because that does take a little bit of time, the county standards would stay in effect in terms of zoning and those development issues there. But once it comes under the town, then it would fall under the town's part. But the way the town is set up currently within the land development code already, that when developments come in through annexation, where there's already a development agreement with Orange County for that development, and part of Chaine du Lac, I think, would fall under that, those standards still apply. They don't change when you come in. The town's code already has that within there, that if there's an existing development agreement in Orange County, and then it's annexed in, we still follow the Orange County Development Agreement in terms of setbacks and all the different standards that may be in there. So that's something, as we do on the town staff side, when we look at the annexation, we do make sure we understand what's all in there so we can communicate to the town council so they're aware of what those standards might be. For the other areas of Chaine du Lac that are not part of that development agreement, that's where there would be a discussion about what kind of standards need to be applied to that area that makes sense, that works. And how we would do that is what the town's code requires. Whenever we annex in a property, it gets zoned as what's called a planned unit development, a PUD. And what that allows for is to develop the specific development standards, zoning standards as part of an ordinance through a public hearing process that would then apply to that area that may be different than what the standards are currently within the town. So again, I can't say that anything would get approved or not approved through that process, but that would be the vehicle and process it would go through to do that. Next, please. So yeah, so in terms of a timeline, this is very rough, but just give an idea. You know, once there's the support, the town gets the support that the town and the town council is comfortable with to move forward. It's about a month to put together the annexation analysis. Robert will go over the other part of it, which is the financial side. That's a big part of it, but Robert will handle that side of it. So we have to go through that process, and then there's about 90 days in terms of hearings and noticing. We have to send notices to the county. We have to send notices to the state. And those kinds of things. So it's about a 90 to 120 day process once it starts, once we start the process. Now it could always maybe go longer, just depending on things that may arise or scheduling issues and things like that, because the other part of the election, you know, making sure that gets scheduled the most efficient way it can get scheduled. So that's a generally rough idea of a timeline for that. Next, please. And I just said that part, so we're good. Well, actually, so that other 60 to 90, that would actually be after we do the annexation. So 90 to 120 is for annexation, then another 2 or 3 months for the land use and zoning change. So that's the entire time frame. So Robert, now it's to you on the administrative side.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Brad. And again, Robert Smith, Town Manager, Town of Windermere. A lot of questions that come up are going to be, you know, what I've listed here: town responsibilities versus HOA, solid waste recycling, fire service protection, EMS, politics of it, additional benefits, and then financial impacts. So we'll start off with the town responsibilities versus the HOA responsibilities. So the town will accept the existing agreement or the plat that was entered into with Orange County. So when the HOA was platted and developed, they entered into a developer's agreement, and whatever is in that agreement is something that the town would abide by. The HOA would continue to be responsible for roads, common areas, stormwater, and lighting. And the town would memorialize this in an annexation agreement. And just to roll back a little bit, the reason that this area is considered for annexation is because back in, I would say, 2014, 2015, there was a lot of interest in annexing in, especially with the northwest corner of Apopka Vineland and Conroy Windermere. So the town did a charrette or a planning session and identified some areas of their future annexation with the hopes that we would enter into a joint planning agreement with Orange County. But those areas included very lucrative areas that the town and Orange County could not agree to. So, you know, the best step that we would take would be to annex in contiguous, very compact portions that are next to us that would not create a financial impact to the town, and the financial impact to those residents within the HOA or the development would be minimal. So the town would enter into an annexation agreement. So we would list out everything prior to the annexation occurring, so everybody knows where the town stands and where the HOA and or the other residents stand. So solid waste recycling, this is something that I think a lot of you have expressed concerns about in the past. I know with Orange County, you have 1 time a week. With the Town of Windermere, we do 2 times a week for solid waste pickup. That's Tuesdays and Fridays. We have recycling, that's going to be one time a week on Tuesdays, and then we do yard waste once a week on Wednesdays. Currently, you can see where our solid waste assessment is compared to what you're currently paying with Orange County. So it'd be $236 a year for solid waste, and then about $639 a month, $77 a year for recycling. And you compare that to the 1 day a week versus the 2 day a week. And I can tell you right now, we looked at 1 day a week and we had a lot of blowback because, again, if there's a holiday or something else, then you're still waiting quite a while until you're able to get that pickup. I think Orange County saw that when they had shutdown services on the landfill when we had the what was the last hurricane that came through? Shorter than I, but
Idalia.
Idalia. The last one that came through, they should have done the landfill, and you would think that they would schedule the pickup for the next day, but they didn't. They had to wait an additional week for that. So fire service protection, this is something that came up in the previous annexations. Currently, what we have with Orange County and with ECOE, the town does not have a fire or EMS service. We contract that out to ECOE. So ECOE provides first responder services when it comes to fire and EMS to the town of Windermere. It used to be with AMR, but we switched that to ECOE because they're arriving on scene first anyway. ECOE and Orange County, they have what's called a automatic aid agreement. And basically that is, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. In the South, which means Windermere, Orange County has more stations. In the north of ECOE, Orange County has less stations, so ECOE will respond to those calls, so Orange County doesn't have to build any more stations or man any more stations because they have that automatic aid agreement. And so Orange County can and will respond to calls in Windermere if ECOE is not able to respond in a faster time. So this was a big deal when the town of Windermere was looking to annex in Isleworth, and that was when Mayor Crotty was in his position, and there was a lot of back and forth on that. Now the assessment that we currently have is at 0.8 mils, and we're probably going to reduce that to 0.7 mils next fiscal year, regardless of the annexation or not. And the reason for that is because the amount of money that we take in over the costs are a little bit more than what we spend, but we put that into a reserve in case we need to purchase an additional truck or help pay for or fund another station. So we make sure that we have some reserves in there to to ensure that we're going to have that response time that you guys are used to or enhanced. The politics of it. You don't lose anything by annexing into the town of Windermere when it comes to politics. Once you are annexed into the town, you are residents of the town and you can vote for town council, you can sit on boards, and you will also continue to be Orange County residents. So you can still vote for the mayor, the sheriff, the tax collector, state attorney, so on and so forth. So you're gaining an additional level of politics to have a more of a local say in what happens locally. Right now, you are just pretty much an island, and you're 108 votes for the entire county. 108 votes in the town of Windermere is significant with the 3,000 residents that we have. And with voter turnout. So you have a lot bigger say in what happens locally. And again, you have a lot of direct access to local leaders and staff. If you talk to actual town residents, they will tell you we are very accessible. Everybody pretty much in Windermere has my cell phone number. They text me, call me, email me, so on and so forth. And I respond to them immediately. Just recently, I believe Zach texted me about an issue that happened with, I think it was Windermere Country Club. 1 second here. About their sprinklers, and we were able to get their HOA management group on to make sure that we switched that in order to accommodate, to make sure the kids weren't crossing Park Avenue in order to miss the sprinklers and the flooding. So you have a lot more direct access with local leaders and staff. And again, you're not losing anything, you're actually gaining something for more local say for what happens locally. And one of the things that we're looking at locally that may have a direct impact on you, you know, we're trying to do some traffic improvements and getting potable water systems in and around the town. So added benefits. Okay, once annexed in, you'll be able to access a lot of stuff that I believe a lot of you thought you had access to, but you did not. A lot of people, when they look at their driver's license, it says Windermere, Florida. That's because of the post office. And, you know, when you come in and you ask for a boat ramp or a tennis court key, you're turned away. Once you become a town resident, then the boat ramps, you get a passcode for the boat ramps, which is Fernwood and Bessie. And then for tennis courts, Main Street and Windermere Recreation Center. You'll also be able to attend eligible or resident-only events that we have about 2 or 3 a year. Get a discount for town hall rentals. You can sit on the various boards and committees. And then a really big thing that I believe a lot of you are interested in is the disaster recovery. Again, we have 3,000 residents. We have 1,600 parcels. The addition of Chaine would be de minimis, and we're able to collect stuff. I believe we're able to, for the last hurricane that came through, which was Ian, that had a really significant issue with the town of Windermere. We're able to clean that up within 1 month. And I know some of you were waiting months after months to get the debris picked up. And with each hurricane that's come through since 2010, we were one of the first ones to ask for reimbursements from FEMA, and we're able to receive those reimbursements as well. So, and we work closely with FEMA, Department of Emergency Management. So again, your lag time from getting a response is a lot less when you're in the town of Windermere. Financial impact, which I know a lot of you are asking questions about. With the current millage rate, and again, a millage rate is if you take the value of your assessed value of your home, divide it by 1,000. That's how many mills your house is worth. You multiply that by whatever jurisdiction you're in. So with the county, I believe it's 4.4, which you'll still have, but then you have an MSTU for fire and for Orange County Sheriff. But our millage rate is 3.7425, which is the lowest in Orange County. We also have a stormwater assessment, which is staying the same. And then we additionally have the solid waste assessment, which again, you saw the cost difference, which you're getting 2 times a week as opposed to 1. The 0.8 fire assessment that we currently have, I believe that we'll reduce that to 0.7 next fiscal year. And that difference could range between $150 to $275 a year. So the financial impact of you annexing into the town of Windermere, and this is Chaine I'm talking about, would be about $375 a year. So annually you pay additional $375. This is not including the first fiscal year. And the reason for that is because there is a lag time between when you're annexed in and when you pay taxes to the town of Windermere. So let's say you're on the presidential primary in February. Then after that, your taxes wouldn't hit until the November of the next fiscal year. So there is a time between where the town would have to absorb some of the cost, but the cost differential is not significant enough not to seek the annexation of Chaine, meaning that we have money in the fire reserves to offset the cost of any additional costs for fire services. And the actual annexation would cost the town about $20,000 for legal fees, developers agreement creation and the election itself. All right, so with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Dave Ogden, and he will talk about the Windermere Police Department. And again, we're going to be open and ready for any questions and answers after the fact.
Great, thanks, Robert. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd encourage everybody to check out, excuse me, the Town of Windermere websites for our values, vision, statement of the Windermere Police Department. But for those of you who don't know me, haven't got a chance to meet me before, my name's Dave Ogden. I've been 37 years in law enforcement and been with the Windermere Police Department for the last 10 years. I retired from the Orange County Sheriff's Office prior to that date. If you look up on the slide here today, one of the great accomplishments that we've had, and probably most of you have known, you've been by the facility, we've got a brand new facility that is a shareable community training room. So one of the great things is that HOA meetings and things of that nature, some of the boards have a capability of sharing in that room should they want to. We were at 100% staffing. We did lose somebody from a transition. They flew out west to move out west, but we've got a bunch of people on staff ready to go. We are accredited, excuse me, folks. We are an accredited police agency, so we received our accreditation, which means we're at the same accreditation level as any other accreditation police department in the state of Florida, which if you don't know, there's only about 40% of police agencies across the state, about 45 right now, that are actually accredited police departments. We are a small police department, but what that means, or what I've learned to know that means, is that we have a level of service that is beyond what I could have imagined. Even at the Orange County Sheriff's Office for some time, I ran the community policing division. So I'm proud to say that I've actually learned a lot coming here about the level of service that we get a chance to offer. And one of those things is our response times. While I was at the Orange County Sheriff's Office, I had Chandelock and the other areas in unincorporated Orange County. I would go to a lot of community meetings, HOA meetings at a time, and they would ask me why it takes 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour and a half for a deputy sheriff to respond to a call for service. Where our average time across the board for emergency calls and non-emergency calls is 3 minutes. 3 minutes is a lot. I always say, seconds count, when police officers are minutes away, but our officers are very close. We respond very quickly. We also, in addition to that, we respond to all the medical calls. We do that as a level of service for our town. We do that because all of our officers are CID trained. They're all CPR trained, and we carry AEDs. And, that really came to light. If any of you participated in the 510K run this weekend, we unfortunately had a runner that went down who actually, we're not sure exactly what happened. We do know that he lost a pulse. Thank goodness there was actually a doctor on scene to start CPR, but our officers were there immediately, deployed the AED, and the AED actually resuscitated the individual. He's doing well. We talked to him in the hospital today. So again, I think the medical calls for service for us are great. But the relationships that our officers have with our residents is beyond whatever I could have imagined. And the communications that we offer to you guys is going to be above none other that you receive. We have a Windermere Safety Watch that we created upon my arrival here, where I talk directly to the residents when anything that's going on relevant to the community that has potential risk for them or something that they need to know about. Whether it's a burglary that happened overnight or something to a car or just ongoing frauds that we've seen, we communicate with the individuals, whether that's on the Safety Watch or social media or our town app. And I'm sure a lot of you are on the town app there. Again, this is a value added to the police department, but I think our police officers offer a level of service above what I imagine in other agencies that I participated in. And we'd be happy to, if you guys choose to annex, we'd be happy to service Chandelock area as well.
Right, Chief, and then there's no additional need for additional officers. And then also, can you explain Sector 3 versus the size of the town and also the detectives?
Sure. But actually, the sheriff's office just changed their jurisdictions. They actually have 6 sectors now, so you guys may or may not be aware of that. Again, I retired from there, so I still have a lot of resources in there that are there. But the entire area of Sector 3, when I actually supervised Sector 3 as a Sector 3 captain for several years. During that time, Sector 3 encompassed Pine Hills. It encompassed Ocoee, Winter Garden, Dr. Phillips, the Town of Windermere, and then all the way out into essentially the 535 area right there. So if you can imagine responding to complaints from citizens that we would have when they would ask me why you wouldn't see or don't see a deputy for some time, and I'm sure I've heard some of that from the Chandelloc residents. And it's a pretty simple reason, is that most of the deputy sheriffs are actually busy and calls for service and responding to areas in Pine Hills for the activity they have going on there. Whatever it is on any given night, the majority of our deputy sheriffs were there. As opposed to that, our officers usually have 2 in the afternoon, 2 at night, with a supervisor that floats. So we have round the clock coverage 24/7 at all times. We only have 14 officers, but we have 20, actually 21 now with reserve officers. And reserve officers are officers that come and work free. Some of them just have better paying jobs than they can ever get in law enforcement. And they just like to do this out of the goodness of their heart. And they work holidays and weekends and special events. You'll see them at food truck nights and all these other things. And the last thing people ask me about sometimes is, what if a real crisis occurs? Again, I know a lot of your residents in Chandelloc, and they're aware of my history. I spent 15 years on the SWAT team. I was one of only 4 high-risk incident commanders in Orange County Sheriff's Office that was responsible for the most critical incidents that happened there. I also still continue to sit on the Regional Security Domestic Task Force, so RDSTF 5, which I sat on when I was in the Sheriff's Office. And I can continue to do that so that I can understand what's important about regional assets in our area. And what do I mean by regional assets? Should we have anything major that happens, hostage situation, barricade gunmen, all those kind of things, God forbid, we're not expecting any of those things kind of happen. But I understand how to pull those rights and use those rights immediately, just like the Sheriff's Office, through the mutual aid and ongoing coverage that we have with everybody else. So I'm very comfortable with that. We have had to use that before, unfortunately, a few years ago. Some of you may be aware that, and unfortunately, we had a double homicide in town. And we ran that along with Orange County Sheriff's Office and several other local entities. However, we actually ran the investigation itself. We ran the crime scene itself. We ran everything else. And thankfully that we actually got 3 45-year convictions on that individual right there. So the interesting thing about our investigations is this, is again, running the Sheriff's Office investigation, the investigative unit, intelligence units, things of that nature. The most prevalent crimes that we're going to see are frauds and things of that nature. Sheriff's Office doesn't even work those kind of cases any longer. It's just something that goes by. To be honest with you, if you have a car burglary, very seldom is that going to be worked unless there's a suspect right there and they get caught or they get captured. The officers, they know this. When I came here, I told them one thing. I said, work any crime, whether it is a mailbox theft or theft of something in your mailbox, whatever it is, work it as if you're working a homicide investigation. And that's the level of service that we expect to get. We do have a full-time investigator. We have a part-time investigator, which is John Allen, who just retired, who stays part-time. And the level of experience we have there with past homicide experience, all kinds of investigative experience, being assigned to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, puts us in a very comfortable position to be able to handle any kind of service crime that comes around our table. Okay.
All right, thank you, Chief. And one of the things too is that with the detective, just for the 2.2 square miles that we currently have, and the amount of crime that we currently have, each one of those cases will be worked, as Chief stated, as like it was a homicide. With Sector 3 or whatever sector you're in right now, there's a certain amount of detectives that have to cover the entire region or sector, and they may not give you the amount of comfort, care, or details as if you were in the town of Windermere. So let me go to, all right, so now we're at the questions portion, and I will go ahead, and if you want to raise your virtual hand, and or if you need to go ahead and type your question in the chat box, please feel free to do so. Again, this is public information. There's no limit on the amount of questions, the amount of time that we'll spend with you. We want to make sure that you have all the information possible in order to make an informed decision or to inform your neighbors of, what's going on, how it'll happen. In all honesty, again, the town of Windermere, well, I think Chaine already considers itself a part of the town of Windermere because of the proximity. Part of the community, always coming to downtown, so on and so forth. The town will not have to add one additional staff person for the annexation of Chaine. The town would receive an added benefit of tax revenues, not only the residents, of course, but the tax revenues of at around $400,000 each fiscal year. And for those of you that are not aware, the current budget for the town of Windermere, excluding all the federal and state earmarks that we received, is typically around $7 million. So that is a huge benefit for the town of Windermere. And also, again, for Chaine residents, because again, you're having a bigger local say in what happens locally, with the roundabouts, with water projects, with wastewater projects, so on and so forth. So again, don't be shy. We're here to answer any of your questions. We have one hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, how are you? Daryl Brantley, my wife and I reside in the Manors. Just a quick question. You talked about this being an involuntary. So can you kind of convey the number of residents in Chaine that are supporting this and the number of residents that are not, what the percentage would be?
Yeah, we were approached by some residents of Chaine and then we met with the HOA and they were supportive of the effort for the annexation. But as far as exact percentages, we don't have that exact number until we send a petition or get feedback like from meetings that we have tonight. But from what we have received, the majority, I would say the vast majority of the residents that are there are in favor of the annexation itself.
Okay, and a follow-up question. Going back to the land map that you had on the screen, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say the current town of Windermere is approximately 1+ acre for the town proper. I'm sorry, 1+ square mile.
2.2 square miles, sir.
2.2. So what does this annexation add to that 2.2?
Brad, do you have that offhand?
I have it on acres. It's on the next slide. There you go. It's 103 acres. So 640 acres is in a square mile. So it's, about a third of an acre to be added on.
So it takes us up to
Third of a
about
mile.
Yeah. Or it's quarter mile, right? Square mile.
Yeah, as far as level of service wise for the balance of the residents, we did take a look at that. We wouldn't look at an annexation that would, diminish the current level of service for town residents. That's why this was a good fit, I think, for both Chaine and for the town of Windermere, was because, again, it's not going to diminish the level of service that you're currently getting.
Okay. And last question I have for you are entrance gates in and out of that subdivision. I know town proper Windermere, we don't have any gates.
Yeah, they're allowed to have gates. Any HOA or development is allowed to have gates. That was more of a public policy thing than actually within the land development code. You've seen a gate go up at Rosser Reserve, which is just east of the actually west of the boat dock on 6th Avenue. But those are allowed. And again, that was more of a public policy thing than actually in the land development code. So if the manors wanted to become a gated community, they'd have to take over their own roads and take over maintenance of those roads and sidewalks within their development, just like Chaine currently does.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Please don't be shy. This is a open meeting for any and all questions relative to the town of Windermere and the possibility of the annexation. Thank you to ex-council member Liz Ander for joining the meeting as well.
Thanks, Robert. Always a pleasure to be on, and I'm glad to see that you're holding these.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Smith, I want to add that Sunbury Court and Marquesas also have a gated community.
Yes. So again, we'll leave the line open for another 2 minutes and see if there's any additional questions, concerns. And again, as probably Liz Ander and some of the other residents can attest, is that everybody has my cell phone number and pretty much Chief's cell phone number. So if you hear a helicopter flying over, or if there's something happening in the middle of the night, we're very responsive. We get a text message, we respond immediately. Or if we get an email, we respond immediately and let you know what's going on. Or if there's any concerns, we make sure we get back to you as well. Same thing with solid waste. If there is any issues with solid waste, we make sure we rectify that immediately. And some people had questions relative to the land development codes. What's going to change? Can people build duplexes or something else? The fact of the matter is this: we'll agree to adhere to what Orange County had during the plat, which means that the land development code that you currently have would be the land development code that you will see in the future. And that would be in the developer's agreement. As you can probably hear, my kids are ready for their dinner time. So if there's no further questions.
Robert, may I say, this is Liz Ander. I do want
Yes,
to
ma'am.
everyone who might be on the call from Chaine, truly the town of Windermere, everyone on the staff and public works, in town administration, and in our Windermere Police Department are the utmost accessible responsiveness. It's unparalleled. And when Robert says that, he's absolutely on. Every constituent I ever had in the town that talked to me about that said the same. So regardless of your position on anything, any question you ever have will be answered and addressed.
Yes, and this is Zach Stumbos, also from Chaine, and I can certainly attest to that, to everybody there in Windermere. Worked with them, known them all for many years. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. And that was even before we had annexation discussions. When we're
Yes,
talking
sir.
about levels and so on and so forth. So we're neighbors, but we're not strangers.
And
say is
I've known our chief, Dave Ogden, for 25 years, and can attest to his character and hard work and everything about him.
Thank you. So if there's no other questions, again, we'll go ahead and stop recording, and I will thank you all for attending tonight. I know you didn't have to, but it's always good to get the information directly from staff on the pros and cons. And also, this is being recorded, so we'll post it on our YouTube channel, so you can share it with your friends, neighbors, or anybody else that would like to take a look at it. So thank you very much for attending tonight.
Thank you. Bye-bye.